Welcome to This Explainer. When most of us picture the Boston Tea Party, we tend to imagine this wild, chaotic rebellion. But actually, the truth is so much more fascinating. We're going to dive straight into the historical records to uncover the incredibly calm, methodical reality behind an event that literally changed the course of history. Okay, 342. That is 342 chests of tea. It's a staggering number, right? And it immediately sets the incredible scale of our story. We're not talking about a few crates just tossed overboard in a fit of rage. No, this was a massive, highly organized logistical undertaking. To understand how the colonists got to the point of destroying that much cargo, we've got to rewind and look at the actual chain of events that led them there. Picture this: Boston Harbor, a freezing cold December night in 1773. You've got the dark water, the warm glow of lantern light on the docks. What we're witnessing here is a completely calculated act of resistance. Definitely not a chaotic riot. But to really grasp the weight of this night, we need to trace the steps backward. Section 1. The roots of resistance. Because obviously, before a single leaf of tea hit that salty water, we need to understand exactly what caused it. The trap was meticulously set. By the early 1770s, Britain had actually repealed most of the earlier taxes from the Townshend Acts, but they deliberately left one in place: the tax on tea. Fast forward to the 1773 Tea Act. Parliament allowed the British East India Company to sell their tea directly to the American colonies at a much lower price. But, and this is a massive but, it still included that existing tax. So Britain essentially lowered the price of the product to appease everyone, but kept the tax firmly in place just to prove a point. The Parliament still held the ultimate power to tax them. So the crucial takeaway here is that this was fundamentally about a core principle. The colonists were deeply suspicious. Sure, the tea was cheaper, but this wasn't about the price tag at all. It was the fact that colonists still had absolutely no representation in the Parliament that had approved the tax in the first place. This was a severe, deep-seated grievance that had been steadily building up for years. Buying the cheaper tea meant accepting the tax, and accepting the tax meant accepting that Parliament could just tax them without their voice or consent. Section 2. The Tea Act Standoff. Let's see how all this simmering tension builds into an unavoidable, dramatic confrontation specifically in Massachusetts. Now, when the East India Company ships arrived across the colonies, they faced massive resistance. In other cities, colonists successfully pressured the ship captains to just turn around and sail right back to England without ever unloading their cargo. Problem solved, right? Well, not in Boston. Royal Governor Thomas Hutchinson absolutely dug his heels in. He flat out refused to let the ships leave without unloading the tea and paying the tax. This created an intense standoff, trapping 3 fully loaded ships, the Dartmouth, the Eleanor, and the Beaver, right there in the harbor for weeks. With the ships stuck, a ticking clock started. The governor was refusing to yield, and the colonists were refusing to let the tea come ashore. During this incredibly tense period, colonial leaders, including the Sons of Liberty, didn't riot. Instead, they held town meetings. They very methodically planned their response to this deadlock. Section 3. The Night of the Protest. This brings us directly to December 16, 1773, where all those careful plans were finally executed. According to the historical records, a group of roughly 60 colonists sprang into action. They boarded those 3 trapped ships. Now, many of them were wearing disguises, with some dressing in clothing meant to resemble Native American dress. But historians point out that these disguises were highly symbolic rather than functional. They weren't really fooling anyone. In fact, witnesses at the time could easily recognize many of the participants. Once aboard, they got straight to work. Over the course of roughly 3 hours, this group systematically hauled up, smashed open, and emptied all 342 chests of tea, dumping the contents directly into the freezing waters of Boston Harbor. Just think about the sheer physical labor involved in doing that for 3 hours straight in the freezing cold. And the financial impact? It was staggering. If we translate that destroyed cargo into today's money, they dumped well over $1 million worth of goods right into the sea. That is a massive financial blow to the British East India Company and an incredibly bold statement to the British Crown. But here is where the popular myth totally diverges from the historical record. This was not a violent mob tearing a ship apart. It was incredibly peaceful, deliberate, and organized. Historical accounts completely confirmed that there was zero violence. Aside from the tea, no other property on those ships was damaged, and not a single person was injured during the entire protest. It was a precise, targeted operation. Section 4. The Intolerable Acts. Look, you don't destroy over $1 million of Crown-backed corporate property without some serious consequences, and Britain's response to this was swift and fierce.
In 1774, Parliament passed a series of laws that were so incredibly severe, the colonists actually dubbed them the Intolerable Acts. Britain slapped the colonies with these laws directly to punish them for the tea. They literally closed off the port of Boston, which was the absolute economic lifeblood of the city, demanding that the port remain shut until the destroyed tea was completely paid for. On top of that, they stripped away the powers of Massachusetts' colonial government. The goal here was straightforward: isolate Massachusetts, make an example out of them, and completely crush the resistance.
Section 5. The Path to Unity. We are about to see that this harsh punishment had the exact opposite effect of what Parliament intended. Rather than isolating Massachusetts and scaring the rest of the colonies into submission, the Intolerable Acts deeply backfired. The shared outrage generated immense sympathy and support from colonists in other regions. It proved to the other colonies that, hey, if Britain could do this to Boston, they could do it to anyone. So instead of breaking their spirit, it pushed them together. Later that same year, representatives from 12 different colonies convened at the First Continental Congress to coordinate a unified joint response. It really reads like falling dominoes. Trace this cause and effect chain with me. We start with the 1773 Tea Act, attempting to enforce taxation without representation. That directly causes the deliberate, organized protest on December 16th. That specific act of defiance triggers Britain's fierce retaliation with the Intolerable Acts in 1774. And finally, that overreach catalyzes the First Continental Congress, forging a rapidly growing colonial unity.
It's really fascinating to ponder, did this single, highly organized, and peaceful protest, born out of a long simmering debate over taxes, actually spark the revolution? Would the colonies have ever united without the calm, deliberate destruction of the tea? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and keep questioning the history you think you know.